He saw a teenager thrown to the ground like trash, for nothing but being black. And when he said, "That's not right," they tried to destroy him. Why is justice so dangerous when it comes from within? It was still dark outside, the kind of early morning when even the birds hadn't decided whether to sing. Jeremiah Davis sat alone in his kitchen, elbows on the table, both hands wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee that had long gone cold. He hadn't touched his breakfast. 2 eggs sat untouched beside a slice of toast that curled at the edges. The television was on low in the living room, some morning anchor droning about weather and school closures. But Jeremiah wasn't listening. His eyes kept drifting to the badge on the table. It lay face up on a folded napkin. Silver, clean and polished, but somehow it looked like it didn't belong to him anymore. "You're up early," his wife said, walking in wearing her robe, tying the belt around her waist. He didn't look up. "Couldn't sleep." "You haven't been sleeping for days." He nodded slowly. She poured herself some coffee, sat across from him, and placed her hand gently over his. "You gonna tell me what happened?" He hesitated, then said, "I saw something I shouldn't have." She didn't answer right away. She just held his eyes. He added, "And then I did something about it." There was a long silence. Then she said, "Did you get someone hurt?" "No," he replied, almost defensively. "I kept it from getting worse. But now it's me they're coming for." A car passed outside, tires on wet pavement. Jeremiah flinched. His wife noticed. "You're locking the door twice now. And yesterday you checked the back window twice before bed." He looked down. "Just being careful." "You were careful before. This is different." He nodded again, eyes heavy. "I filed a report," he finally said. "Internal. About Bradley." Her expression changed. A mixture of fear and understanding passed over her face. "Jeremiah, I had to," he said. "I couldn't stand there and pretend like I didn't see that boy get shoved into the pavement for nothing. You know what this means, don't you?" "They've already started," he said. "The looks. The silence. Yesterday I walked into roll call, and no one even turned around." She squeezed his hand. "What if they come after you?" He didn't answer. Just stared at the badge. "I did the right thing," he whispered. "Didn't I?" She didn't speak. She didn't have to. In the silence, he already knew the answer, and the price. Before all of this, before the silence, before the badge began to feel foreign, Jeremiah Davis believed in the system. Not blindly, not with wide-eyed naivety, but with a quiet hope that had kept him steady through 19 years on the force. He believed that one honest cop could make a difference. Maybe not all at once, maybe not publicly, but in small ways. One traffic stop at a time. One child protected. One angry partner calmed. He didn't wear the badge for glory or power. He wore it because his cousin Marcus didn't get justice. They were both 17 when Marcus got pulled over for a busted taillight. What should have been a warning turned into bruises, broken ribs, and silence. Jeremiah never forgot the way Marcus sat on the curb afterward, staring into the dirt like it held the answer. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stopped speaking for a week. That memory stayed with Jeremiah. It was what pushed him into the academy, into uniforms, into that first roll call. But the system he joined wasn't built for him. He'd always known he was being watched more closely than others. White officers could come in late, talk back, disappear for hours. He had to be perfect, on time, buttoned up, calm, and careful. Every day, every shift. Still, he made rank. Sergeant by 37. Commendations. Letters from community leaders. A mayor's handshake once. But no matter how far he climbed, there was a line he couldn't cross. That line came into view more and more during the last few years. At roll call, jokes started to hit different. Once, an officer showed a meme of a black suspect labeled Future Inmate of the Month. Laughter all around. Jeremiah didn't laugh. The room got quiet after that. No one said anything to him, but they noticed. Assignments changed slowly, too. The younger white officers were put on drug cases, gang units, action spots. Jeremiah got shuffled into paperwork, community outreach, and mentorship duties. It wasn't a demotion, but it felt like insulation. One morning, Captain Renner pulled him aside. "Jeremiah, you're solid. You've always been solid. But sometimes you just need to go with the flow." Jeremiah raised an eyebrow. "What flow is that?" Renner smiled too quickly. "Just don't make waves. You've got a good career. Keep it." That was 2 months ago. Now, sitting in his patrol car outside a grocery store, Jeremiah watched a white rookie approach a group of teenagers too fast, hand already on his belt. All 3 boys were black. none older than 16. Jeremiah stepped out of the car. "Easy," he called. "They're just standing there." The rookie looked back at him, annoyed. "They match a description." Jeremiah's tone sharpened. "So do I. You gonna cuff me too?" The rookie backed down. The kids left. No harm done. But the air around him changed again. Later that day, Officer Bradley cornered him in the locker room. "You embarrassed him," Bradley said. "I stopped him from making a mistake." Bradley leaned in. "You forgot which side you're on." Jeremiah stared at him. "No," he said. "I remember exactly which side I'm on." He knew then that things would shift. And they did. Shift assignments. Shift glances. Shifted tone. Still, he held on to hope. That maybe speaking the truth could still mean something. That the system hadn't hardened beyond repair. But the cracks were widening. And Jeremiah Davis was starting to see that he wasn't inside the system anymore. He was standing right on its edge. It was supposed to be routine. The call came in around 8:40 p.m. Suspicious vehicle, possibly stolen, parked outside a rundown liquor store on the east side. Jeremiah and Officer Bradley were assigned to check it out. Just the two of them. The air was thick with summer heat. Jeremiah's uniform clung to him as they pulled up to the store, headlights washing over the dusty lot. The car in question, a battered gray Honda Civic, was parked off to the side, windows down, engine off. Inside the vehicle sat 3 black teens. They were laughing, passing around a bag of chips. Music played low through a phone speaker. They didn't look nervous. Didn't look dangerous. They looked like kids. Jeremiah turned to Bradley. "Let's keep this calm." Bradley didn't answer. He was already out of the car. "Hands where I can see him," he barked, gun unholstered, voice hard. The boys froze. Jeremiah stepped out quickly, hands open, voice steady. "Take it easy, Brad. We don't even know what we're looking at yet." Bradley ignored him, stepping closer to the driver's side. The boy in the front seat reached, too slowly, for his license. "What are you reaching for?" Bradley shouted, slamming the door open and yanking the teen out. The boy stumbled, hitting the gravel hard. Jeremiah's blood ran cold. "Bradley," he shouted. "Back off." Bradley looked at him, wide-eyed, furious. He was resisting. "No, he wasn't," Jeremiah said. "You didn't even ask him a question." The other 2 teens sat frozen, hands high. One of them looked like he was about to cry. Jeremiah knelt next to the boy on the ground, helping him sit up. "You okay?" he asked softly. The boy nodded, lip trembling. Bradley was still pacing. "You seriously gonna play soft with these little punks?" "They're kids," Jeremiah said flatly. "And we're not here to scare kids." He stood up and faced Bradley. "This stop is over. There's nothing here." Back at the car, Jeremiah filled out a report, light on details, but clear. No crime, no cause, no resistance. Bradley didn't speak the whole drive back. In the locker room that night, Jeremiah took longer than usual. Every motion, removing his belt, folding his shirt, felt heavier. Bradley walked past, muttering, "You think you're better than the rest of us?" Jeremiah didn't rise to it. He just said, "I think we owe those boys more than fear." He went home late that night. His wife was already in bed, but she woke when he sat beside her. "Tough shift?" she asked, eyes barely open. "Yeah," he said quietly. She reached for his hand. "You do the right thing?" "I tried," he whispered. That was all he could say. But the image wouldn't leave him. The teen's head hitting the gravel, the look in his eyes, the sheer confusion on his face. Like he didn't understand how something so normal could become so violent. Jeremiah had joined the force to stop that kind of moment from happening. Now he'd watched it unfold beside him, and had barely managed to stop it from becoming something worse. It wasn't enough. And deep down, he knew that silence wouldn't protect him anymore. Jeremiah didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow above him. The sound of it creaking, soft, rhythmic, didn't bring any comfort. His wife lay beside him, breathing steady, unaware that the man she married was unraveling inch by inch. He kept seeing that boy's face, the confusion, the fear. And Bradley's eyes, filled with rage at being challenged. By the time the alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., he hadn't closed his eyes once. He moved through the morning on autopilot. Shower, shave, coffee, uniform. The badge clipped onto his chest felt heavier than usual. At the station, the air was different, colder. When Jeremiah walked into the locker room, conversations halted. A few glances, a chuckle from the corner. Someone muttered the word traitor, just loud enough for him to hear but not loud enough to confront. He didn't say a word, just opened his locker and changed like nothing happened. Later, at roll call, Captain Renner read out the assignments. Jeremiah's name wasn't listed. "Cap, did you skip me?" he asked. Renner looked up briefly, then said flatly, "You're off patrol today. Filing and reports." Jeremiah didn't argue. He just nodded. But it didn't stop there. That afternoon, the community outreach event he was supposed to lead was reassigned. A memo came down pulling him from a youth mentorship program he'd started 2 years ago. Every piece of his work was quietly being stripped away. When he finally sat alone at his desk, staring at a stack of meaningless paperwork, his hands trembled. It wasn't just retaliation. It was erasure. At home that night, his wife saw it on his face before he spoke. "They're icing you out," she said softly. He nodded. "They won't say it out loud," he replied. "But it's clear. I don't belong anymore." "You never stopped belonging," she said. "They're the ones who forgot why they wear that uniform." He didn't answer. He just took her hand, held it for a moment, then let go. That weekend at church, an elder pulled him aside after service. "I heard about what happened," the old man said, his voice low. Jeremiah braced for judgment. But the elder added, "You did right. That boy, you stopped them from hurting. His grandmother prays for you every night." Jeremiah didn't know what to say. He just nodded, the weight in his chest loosening for the first time in days. But when he returned to work on Monday, the shift was complete. His nameplate had been moved to a different office. No one spoke to him except to assign grunt work. Calls for backup were routed away from him. When he entered the break room, conversations stopped. Even the new recruit, once eager and respectful, avoided eye contact now. Jeremiah sat in silence most days, working longer hours than ever, yet feeling utterly useless. That evening, he opened his personal notebook, the one he hadn't touched in years. He began writing everything down. Names, dates, what was said, what wasn't. It wasn't revenge. It was insurance. And maybe deep down it was preparation. He still didn't know what came next. But he was starting to realize that silence was no longer an option. And the system he had believed in for so long, it had made its choice. Now he had to make his. The city council meeting was never meant to be public. Originally, it was supposed to be a closed-door session, routine budget reviews, a few reports from the fire department, nothing headline-worthy. But someone leaked Jeremiah's name. And now, the chamber was packed. People filled every row, church elders in pressed suits, high school students in backpacks, mothers holding babies. All of them had heard about the black sergeant who stood up. No one had heard him speak. Until now. Jeremiah stood at the podium, the microphone barely adjusted to his height. The lights overhead were too bright. His uniform felt tight, heavy, like it didn't belong to him anymore. He cleared his throat. "My name is Sergeant Jeremiah Davis. I've been with the department for 19 years. Silence. He glanced at Captain Renner in the back row, arms crossed, face unreadable. "I'm not here to embarrass the department. I'm not here to point fingers." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "I'm here because I saw something I couldn't unsee. And I said something I couldn't unsay." A murmur moved through the room. He continued. "I watched a young black boy get thrown onto the pavement by a fellow officer without warning, without cause, without restraint. I stepped in. I did what I thought any decent officer would do. And since then," he paused, "they've made me invisible, moved me from my post, isolated me, and not a single person above me has asked why." A woman near the front started to cry. Jeremiah's voice grew steadier. "I joined this force because I believed change could come from within. Because I believed that silence is complicity. And I still believe that." He stepped back from the mic. For a second, nothing happened. Then someone clapped. Then more. Within seconds, the room echoed with applause. Not loud or wild, just steady, respectful. Jeremiah didn't smile. He just nodded, eyes wet, jaw tight. After the meeting, a young black man approached him outside. "Sergeant Davis," he said nervously. "I'm in the academy right now. Been thinking about quitting." Jeremiah raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I don't want to be part of a system that eats its own." Jeremiah looked at him, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then you be the part that fights back." The next morning, Jeremiah found a note slipped under his office door. It read, "Watch your back, traitor." No signature. He showed it to Renner. The captain read it, folded it, then dropped it into a drawer without comment. "That's it?" Jeremiah asked. Renner looked at him coldly. "You chose this. Don't act surprised by the fallout." Jeremiah walked out without another word. That night at home, his wife was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. "I saw the speech," she said. Jeremiah nodded. She stepped forward and hugged him tight. I was scared, she whispered. Still am. But I'm proud of you. They didn't say much else. But when Jeremiah went inside, he took off his badge and set it on the table. Then he opened his notebook again. He added new entries. Names. Dates. The note. Renner's response. Everything. This time, he wasn't just protecting himself. He was building a record. Because if the system wouldn't speak for him, he'd make sure it wouldn't forget him. It started small. First, his parking spot was reassigned without notice. Then his department email suddenly lost access to internal updates and meeting invites. When Jeremiah mentioned it to IT, they claimed it was a glitch. He knew better. The next morning, he opened his locker and froze. Inside was a dead rat, laid carefully on top of his uniform shirt. A folded slip of paper was pinned to it. 3 words in all caps. Shut your mouth. He didn't flinch, didn't yell, just stood there for a moment, breathing through his nose, then quietly removed the rat, wrapped it in a towel, and tossed it in the dumpster behind the precinct. He didn't report it. He already knew what the response would be. Later that day, Jeremiah was dispatched to a domestic disturbance in one of the rougher parts of town. Usually calls like that required 2 officers minimum. Backup followed close behind. But when he checked the dispatch log, no one else had been assigned. He radioed in. Unit 4 to 1 requesting confirmation. I'm alone on this call. A pause. Then the voice replied, That's affirmative for to 1. Proceed. It didn't feel like a mistake. He arrived at the house, windows shattered, front door hanging open. Screaming inside. A man yelling, something heavy crashing to the floor. Jeremiah gripped his flashlight tighter, heart pounding. He knew better than to go in alone. But he also knew if he hesitated, they'd write him up for failure to respond. He approached carefully, hand on his sidearm. The man inside lunged at him without warning. They wrestled in the entryway until Jeremiah managed to subdue him, cuffs clinking against skin. He walked out with a bruised shoulder and a split lip. When he returned to the station, no one asked if he was okay. No one said a word. At home, his wife gasped when she saw his face. What happened? She cried, reaching for a cold cloth. Call went sideways, he muttered. Where was your backup? He looked down. They didn't send any. She stared at him in disbelief. They left you out there? Alone? He didn't answer. She already knew. That night, they sat on the porch in silence. Finally, she said, You need to leave that place. I can't, he replied. If I walk away now, they win. Jeremiah, she said softly, this isn't about winning or losing. This is survival. He stared out into the night. The cicadas hummed in the trees. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and fell quiet again. I became a cop to stop people like them, he said, not to be taken down by them. She placed a hand on his leg. Then fight, but don't let them take you from me. The next day, Jeremiah found his tires slashed. All 4. He didn't report it. Instead, he opened his notebook and added more entries. The rat, the call, the injury, the silence. He began making copies. Sent one to a friend in internal affairs. Another to a local journalist he trusted from years back. Not because he was ready to go public, but because he knew the system wasn't just trying to scare him anymore. It was trying to erase him. And he wouldn't go quietly. The morning felt different. There was no note. No slashed tires. No anonymous whispers in the hallway. Just a strange, hollow calm, like the eye of a storm. Jeremiah moved through the station with quiet determination. He didn't flinch when someone bumped into his shoulder without apology. Didn't respond when Officer Bradley walked past and muttered, Still here, huh? Yes. He was still there. And he wasn't backing down. Later that afternoon, while reviewing old patrol footage in the small records room, a knock tapped against the glass. Jeremiah looked up to see a familiar face, Officer Lena Martinez. Young, steady, one of the few who never avoided him. She stepped inside, closed the door gently. I heard what happened last week, she said. The call. No backup. That wasn't right. Jeremiah nodded, but said nothing. I looked into the dispatch records, she continued. That request, it was edited after the fact. Someone altered the log to say you declined assistance. He sat back in his chair. Can you prove it? She hesitated. Not without risking my job. Then don't, he said quietly. But she didn't leave. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. You're not alone, Davis. People see what's happening. They're just scared. He looked at her for a long second. Then he gave a small nod. Appreciate it, Martinez. She turned to leave, then paused. You got people watching now. The press is poking around. Just be careful. He was. Every move, every word. Calculated. Measured. The man who used to walk these halls with quiet confidence now walked with quiet purpose. 2 days later, he got the call. City Hall. A request to speak at the upcoming public safety town hall. Not an order. A request. He said yes. The auditorium wasn't as packed as the council meeting, but the mood was heavier. More uniformed officers, more reporters. Camera crews lined the aisles. This time, Jeremiah wore his dress blues. He hadn't put them on since the last promotion ceremony 3 years ago. As he walked up to the microphone, he spotted a few familiar faces in the crowd. His wife, sitting in the back, hands clasped tight. Martinez, standing near the side wall, arms crossed, eyes locked on him. He cleared his throat. I was told I could use this time to speak freely, he began. A few people nodded. So that's what I'll do. He took a slow breath. For the past few months, I've lived in the space between silence and retaliation. I've watched the system I once believed in turn on me not with violence, but with indifference. And in many ways, that hurts more. A murmur rippled through the crowd. He pressed on. I didn't break a law. I didn't abandon my duty. I didn't lie. All I did was speak. Speak about a young boy thrown to the ground. Speak about the fear in his eyes. And I said, this isn't right. He paused. And for that, I was left alone in a dangerous call. Threatened. Undermined. Erased. A reporter raised a camera. Someone began typing furiously on a laptop. I became a cop to protect people like that boy, not to be punished for refusing to ignore him. He looked up, scanning the room. If we can't protect each other from injustice within our own walls, then how can we protect the public outside them? There was a long silence. Then slowly someone began to clap. Not loud, but real. Others joined. Martinez nodded once from the side. His wife wiped her cheek, her face a mix of fear and pride. That night, Jeremiah walked out of the auditorium into the cool night air. He didn't smile, but his shoulders felt lighter. As he reached his car, a young man stepped from the shadows. Sergeant Davis? The man asked. Jeremiah turned. The man looked familiar. I was one of those kids. That night. In the car. I never got to say thank you. Jeremiah blinked. His voice caught in his throat. You okay? He finally managed. The young man nodded. Getting there. They shook hands. And in that small moment, quiet, honest, human, Jeremiah felt something he hadn't in a long time. Purpose. The badge was still on the kitchen table. Jeremiah hadn't touched it in 2 days. He walked past it each morning, past it again each night. It lay there like a question, one he hadn't answered yet. Outside, the sky had begun to turn that deep orange color that only came at the end of long, heavy days. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, watching the sun slip behind the row of houses across the street. His wife stepped beside him, a cup of tea in her hands. Did you hear back from Internal Affairs? She asked. He shook his head. They're reviewing it, he said. That's all I got. They'll try to bury it, she said softly. I know. They stood in silence. She looked at him. You gonna keep fighting? He let out a tired breath. I don't know what fighting even means anymore. Then he turned to her. But I know what it costs. She nodded once and placed a hand on his back. The next day, the precinct felt different again. No more threats, no more notes. Just the cold routine. Like he was already gone, even if he was still clocking in. At lunchtime, Officer Lena Martinez passed by his desk and dropped a small file folder. What's this? He asked. Proof, she said, not stopping. Inside were screenshots. Dispatch logs. Timestamp comparisons. A quiet confession from another officer that the altered call logs were no accident. He closed the file, exhaled, and tucked it into his bag. That afternoon, while driving back from a court appointment, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Sergeant Davis? The voice said. Male. Calm. Professional. Yes. This is Thomas Levy, senior investigator with the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. We'd like to talk. Jeremiah pulled the car over and sat for a long while after the call ended. That night, he opened his notebook again. He flipped through the pages, carefully, slowly. Every name. Every date. Every memory recorded in black ink, all of it suddenly heavier, more real. His wife walked in and stood beside him. They're listening now, she asked. For now, he said. He closed the notebook and looked at her. But we both know how that goes. Still, there was a shift in his voice. A small one, but it was there. Hope. The following week, something unexpected happened. A citywide youth mentorship event, long postponed, suddenly reappeared on the department's calendar. Jeremiah's name was listed as a guest speaker. He stared at the email for a full minute before clicking the link. And then he showed up. The room was filled with teens, Black, Latino, Asian, sitting in rows, half engaged, half skeptical. Just like every group he'd met before. He stood at the front, hands clasped behind his back. "My name is Sergeant Jeremiah Davis," he began. "I've been in law enforcement for 19 years. He paused. "And I'm still learning what courage really looks like." He told them about the kid outside the liquor store. About the silence. About speaking up when it hurt. One of the teens raised his hand. "Would you do it again?" Jeremiah didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Yes, even knowing what it cost. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here today. And neither would you." Another hand shot up. "How do you survive in a system that doesn't want to hear you?" He nodded slowly. "You remember who you are before the uniform. And you stay louder than the silence." Afterward, a few stayed behind to shake his hand. One of them, a young black girl with a notebook in her hand, looked up at him and said, "I want to be like you one day, but I want it to be easier." Jeremiah knelt slightly and met her eyes. "Then I'll keep pushing until it is." Later that night, back home, he finally picked up the badge. He turned it over in his hand, rubbed the back with his thumb. He didn't clip it to his belt. He didn't put it in a drawer. He placed it in a small wooden box with a lock, right next to the notebook. Then he sat down at the table, hands folded. And he waited. Not for approval. Not for applause. But for the world to finally hear what truth sounds like when someone refuses to be quiet. There's a cost to speaking the truth, especially when it's spoken in a room where no one wants to hear it. Jeremiah Davis learned that the hard way. He didn't lose his job. He lost his place, his peace, his protection. Not with a sudden crash, but with the quiet, calculated erosion that comes when a system turns inward to protect itself from accountability. But in that silence, we find the lesson. What happened to Jeremiah is not unique. It's a reflection of what too many Americans, especially Black Americans, have faced for generations. The fear of retaliation, the price of integrity, the burden of carrying both the badge and the truth, knowing they don't always walk side by side. Yet even when stripped of support, dignity, and safety, Jeremiah stood firm. Not because it was easy, not because he was fearless, but because he knew what silence would cost if he didn't. And maybe that's what courage really is. It's not the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing when fear is loud, when friends are quiet, and when the system would rather you disappear than disrupt its comfort. For those of us who've lived long enough to see injustice repeat itself, this story isn't just emotional. It's a call to remember that silence, too, is a choice. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do in a broken system is tell the truth. Because truth shakes the ground. And when it's spoken by someone who has nothing left to lose, but everything's still worth protecting, it becomes more than resistance. It becomes legacy. After watching Jeremiah Davis's journey, we want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed something unjust, whether in your community, your workplace, or even within your own family, and felt the pressure to stay silent? What made you speak up, or what held you back? How do we, as individuals and as a society, support those who take a stand when it costs them everything? Your voice matters here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if the story moved you. And don't forget to subscribe to Unlocking Chains for more powerful, untold stories that deserve to be heard.